Hello, guys, and welcome to Season 2 of the Penny Podcast. I'm Andres Bear, I'm in 12th grade, and I am the Capo Student Media web producer.
I'm Camden Southwick. I'm in 12th grade, and I'm a staff photographer.
If this is your first time tuning in, the Penny Podcast is a weekly podcast that incorporates interview and conversational elements.
Now, starting off with our CSM highlight, this week it's going to go to Tracy Tran for her article, Drumline Channels Passion into Final Performances on Dual Competition Day, published under our Arts and Entertainment section. I'll recite the opening to her article. Thunderous and powerful from the bass drums, synchronized and sharp from the snare drums, bright and tinkle from the chimes, expeditiously movement between each beat. The Coppell High School drumline incredibly portrayed the strong emotional changes and the intensity of anger seen in every member's eyes. To read the rest of Tran's piece, head over to coppellstudentmedia.com.
This week on One Shot, Tyler the Creator brought out Drake as a secret headliner for the second night of Camp Flogna at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, California. Due to the secrecy of the mystery headline, a plethora of people ended up booing Drake, and he promptly walked off stage. While Frank Ocean fans were upset that the mystery headliner ended up being Drake, true Frank fans know that the likeliness of Frank performing anywhere is close to none. Camden, would you ever boo an artist off stage?
No, I don't think I could do that. It just seems like you can't do that to someone at their own performance, you know? It's just not like the right thing to do.
I can see that. Now, onto the main show. What is your full name, grade, and favorite color?
Hi, my full name is Roma Mazumdar. I'm in 12th grade. My favorite color, lots of different types of blue and green. It's hard to vary it down to one.
Nice. Explain the name of your poetry collection, The Beginning of My BS.
So I get a lot of questions about why I titled it The Beginning of My BS, but basically the first ever journal that I started writing poetry in was in 9th grade, maybe end of 8th. And for some reason, I titled the first page The Beginning of My BS because I guess I thought it was edgy or cool, and I decided I had to keep that going for the real book. And if I do write a second, it'd be called My BS Continued.
Awesome.
So what are some of your book's major themes and topics? Would you consider your book controversial or realist?
So there's 5 main chapters. It starts off with growing pains, which kind of covers just difficulties with growing up, and I think a lot of things many people can relate to. And then there's passion and heartache, which is obviously romantic stuff, or I think the entire book there's a theme that goes to it's more on the pessimistic side. It's more sad. You won't find too many happy poems, but there's passion and heartache, and then there's pessimism, which is just a bunch of kind of sad negative stuff that goes over a lot of different topics. And then there's universal affliction, which covers a lot of world issues. A lot of it is mainly poverty problems and just things I've seen in my normal life around the world and stuff. And there's quite a few that I wanted in there about child marriage, but I had to remove quite a few due to legal issues with libel and defamation. And then the last chapter is Nothing and Everything Else, which are a few poems I had in there that I didn't think fell into any chapter. And then the controversial. So there are a few poems in there that many people would deem controversial. There's one called, it's Parental Advisory, Non-Religious Lyrics. That's the name of the poem. And basically the entire poem basically I'm saying why I don't believe in God. And I'm talking about how I don't think there's a man out there helping us and everything. And that, I think, that bothered some people. And then there's some that are a little bit about sexuality in the way that there's a poem that's saying that I think people should love for the substance, not for the physical. So it kind of talks about bisexuality and pansexuality and about how people should love that way. And I think that's a big one I was scared for any adult to read. And then there's a few that go through sexuality a little bit more, and that's that was a big fear of mine for adults to read because they would kind of question that. And the other controversial stuff is about wealth. There's a few about how I talk about money can't make us happy, and I talk about my family itself, how we have a lot of money but no one's really happy in it. But yeah, those are the main controversial topics brought up.
So I guess your book overall just sort of dips into both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you purposefully place these sections in specific spots and the poems in specific spots to kind of hit the reader as they go?
A little bit. So I put growing pains first, just because that's the growing up, because there's a lot of poems still referring to your childhood and stuff in there. So it's starting off growing, and then you get to pessimism, which is kind of the teenage phase of where you're everything's crappy, everything's bad. And then after that is passion and heartache, because I think as you get once you're in your teenage years and a little bit later you start having romantic relationships and you start experience heartache. And then after that I did universal affliction because you're more mature and you're starting to notice world problems. And then everything and nothing else is kind of the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there was an order, there was a thoughtful order, and I didn't, this was me trying to be artistic, but I didn't call them chapters, they're called pieces. and then the
Oh.
pieces all come together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you scared in terms of the legal issues that you might have faced had you published those?
Well, so I originally didn't plan on, I didn't think any legal issues would come about when I, was submitting my manuscript, but there was a few poems that I had that it never actually specified the person by name, but I described them quite in depth. It was about these women I met in India, and I would, say, she's 23, she lives here, not lives here, but, I'd be like, she lives in the slums and stuff, and I actually had to remove these because one of them, I talked about a woman and her, extremely abusive alcoholic husband. And my publishing company told me that I would have to get a signature from the husband in order to publish that because they're like that's libel or defamation. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna get the signature of this drunk alcoholic man. And they were like, sorry, you can't publish it otherwise. And that was a really frustrating point because that was one of my favorite poems, but they did not let me publish it, even though I don't think that illiterate man who lives in the slums will ever read my book because he lives in India in the middle of nowhere. But there was always that legal precedence reigning over my head. But
Wow.
yeah, that was that was the biggest frustration, I think, that making me delete poems.
So a lot of the poems you had in your book were included or were based off of real people.
Oh, almost all of the poems in my book are based off of people around me or just things I've seen. There's a lot that are very specific to people. There's one about one of my teachers at Kappa High School, actually, and then there's a lot that are about my friends or just relationships I've been in, so about specific people.
Where did you get the inspiration for the book from? Any specific poems or albums, pieces of work?
Yes, actually. So I read the book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, in 8th grade, like everyone else did. And it was one of my favorite books ever. But in the book, there's a poem in there by Jaworski. And it's called once on a yellow paper with green lines. And it's this long 2-page poem. And when I read it, I actually started crying, and I never read something that made me feel such strong emotion. And I was like, oh my god, I want to be able to create something like this, because it was such a strong, powerful poem. Even when I read it today, it gives me goosebumps. And I never was ever really too into poetry before that, but reading that really had me going. And then Bukowski is one of my favorite poets, and someone referred his book to me, and that's a style that I think I follow a lot. Bukowski's poetry.
How is the process of getting your book published? So I guess just list some major moments and developments.
Well, I never thought publishing would even be a possible idea, but a lot of people were like, no, you really try it out. So I compiled a manuscript with my best poems, and I sent it to a lot of publishing houses, and there was a lot of rejection and a lot of no responses whatsoever. But then there was a few that did respond, and it actually took a while for this to happen because I had to create a business plan. Because if you're nobody, they don't want to publish a nobody. They want to publish someone that has potential that they already that already has a name. So I had to create a business plan to explain to them how many I could sell within the first month. And I sent my manuscript to a bunch of famous authors, hoping they'd read it. And I got J. Nalvi Harris to read it, and she gave me an endorsement, and that caught the eye of publishers more because oh, so this is actually probably good. So then they started reading it, and then I got a few acceptances. Archway Publishing was the one that I'm with now, and I decided on them because they're a sister company of Simon & Schuster, which is one of my favorite publishing houses because they publish my favorite people. So I want to go with them because hopefully in the future it'll get republished by Simon & Schuster. But the whole publishing process took 6 months, probably a lot longer than I thought. I thought it'd be a quick thing because I already had everything going. But lots of back and forth emails, constant contracts to do, lots of legal paperwork, and phone calls every day back and forth. And just to go through any phase, it would take so long, and the images and the cover actually took one of the longest parts. And I wish I had spent more time on it, honestly.
Oh. Was there any direct advice that you received from anyone in the industry?
Jane Alvey Harris, the one who I told you guys gave me an endorsement, she was extremely helpful because she went over my entire book, and not only did she just read it, she also left lots of comments and stuff, and she was just kind of telling me a lot about she was basically explaining what endorsements were really important to get and what category of people were really important. But my dad was also a big help throughout the whole thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What was the reason for the cover being one of the longest parts to get done?
Because I was because there was so many ideas I had for the cover, and there was a mood I wanted to be able to catch within it and kind of capture. But it was really difficult because at first we had this whole idea with a hand puppet, one of those little you know what I mean, those puppets that have the strings.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something kind of like that, one of those puppets. But then someone was like, no, that gives. I had one all planned out, but then a lot of people were like, no, that's more of an ominous mood. Try something like this, and we constantly just kept flipping through ideas. And so throughout the other part of the publishing process was during the summer. But then this part came during the school year, and things started getting more busy, so I'd kind of put it off for a bit, and then they'd be like, no, we need this soon. And then the cover we have currently, my friend Raquel Perez, we actually made it in math class on Notability. That's the cover that actually, and we didn't, because like I got professional people to make cover ideas too, but we actually ended up deciding on the one that Raquel made in math class. But we added a lot more edits and made it like, added a lot of things, but it was made on Notability. That's it. That was also always a fun thing, I think.
Just a fun thing to know.
Yeah.
What reminded me of your cover was the original
Yeah,
Scott,
Gatsby. So yeah, no, there was actually another. So I wanted to have a blue background or like a green background, and then I realized like, this looks like the Gatsby cover. I was like, I cannot do that. And we were also in math class when we realized that because we were testing out different colors, and because my sister was like, I really want you to do like a dark blue, and I was like, yeah, I think that would look really good too. That'd be more aesthetic. And even if you go through my phone right now, there's so many dark blue backgrounds of it where I made everything else white and the background dark blue. I was like, this looks way too much like Gatsby. And then so we decided to keep it gray. It originally was white, and then I made it black, and then I made it like a light pink. There was a lot of things going through it, but like the whole idea was sort of, it's like a tear, but it was also supposed to be like a root, like a vine that was like kind of engraved into the face, and like in the eyes it looks like just a bunch of colors, but they're flowers if you look closely within the eye, and it's kind of supposed to be like a contrast, like half the face is completely blank and the other eye is like crying flowers. So it's like the fact that it's vines, it's supposed to be like it's stuck in their face, like they can't get these tears off.
Yeah, but it grabs your attention.
Yeah.
It's definitely one thing that I noticed.
I guess it really like maintains that like somber mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it took way too long to decide that.
Was there a zone or headspace that you had to get into when writing for your book?
Well, so as like I said, a lot of the poems are mainly sad, and I think I write poetry the most when I'm feeling like a surge of emotion, and it's usually when I'm like kind of upset or when I'm like in a down mood. Like I started writing poetry kind of as like an outlet for my emotions. I'm not a good person when it comes to talking about emotions, and I don't know, it makes me feel really weak, and there's like poems about that. But so I'd start writing about it, and I think I write most when I'm feeling kind of upset or like down, or when I see something that like angers me or makes me upset, or even if I see something that makes me really happy, I'll write about it. But it has to be when I'm feeling like an extreme mood. I can't just like write whenever, sort of. It's usually when I'm feeling like an intense feeling.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Do you prefer writing physically or digitally?
Oh, physically, easily. I have at my house, I have like 10 journals just full of poems. I would always write in like journals. Well, not exactly journals, but yeah, there's sort of journals. I would always write in journals, and they're completely filled to the brim. There's certain pages that have like 5 poems on them. But the annoying part was, since it was a book, I had to type them all up to send them to them. So I had to go through and type every single poem up. And I don't know, I way prefer writing them physically. Just like you feel like you're actually getting things out rather than when you're just typing. I don't know, I like the physical feeling of it a lot more, being able to like write and erase and scratch things out. I think you can see how it looks better. But yeah, typing them out was really annoying because I had to type all of them out send the manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I guess I understand why you prefer like physically writing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I get your feeling like how it feels like less mechanical.
Yeah.
More like you're closer with your writing, so like distancing yourself from it.
Yeah, and like there's like with most poems there's a drawing that's with it. There's like there's poems and pictures, and I think like because every time I'd write a poem I'd kind of like draw a photo just like on the bottom or like the side, and I think like that also is like a big part of why I like doing it, because like it was nice to have like a little drawing with it, and then having to like scan those all and send them to the computer was pretty cool.
Yeah, there's always an emotional attachment to have something physically. I know with me it's having my albums physically, and that's just something that I like. Even books too. I just don't like having stuff on the cloud.
Yeah.
Will there ever be a follow-up to your book? If so, what are some ideas that you've been tossing around?
Well, so the publishing house told me that like they want me to make a second one because it's apparently, according to the marketing people, a book sells more when there's a second. When there's like a trilogy or like there's a second one. So I already have a bunch of poems that there's been a bunch of poems I wish I had written before so I could have put them in the book. But I've been writing a lot of poetry now, and like I wish I waited longer to publish so I could put these in there. But I already have a bunch of them. So second book definitely will probably be a thing, but it's gonna take a long time, especially because right now it's senior year and there's a lot of stuff going on. But I will definitely be working towards that. And I think because since I already did like growing and all that stuff, I wouldn't be able to use the same themes. I don't know exactly how to transform it. I think I'd want to do more of a world issues book, just because a lot of the poems I'd delete were the ones about child marriage and stuff. And I'd keep the same theme of I'd have the romantic ones because I know that sells a lot. That's like a big part, like a lot of reasons why people buy it. But I do want to have more poems about world issues. And then I'd probably add some happy poems in there because that's something that's missing in the first one, yeah.
That's awesome. We'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I guess going back to Andres' last comment, what is one album that directly matches the vibe of your poetry collection? And,
I'm referring to like music wise.
Yes.
Elliott Smith. I think he's one of the biggest authors. One of the biggest artists that I listen to usually when I write. I have a specific playlist that I play whenever I write, and it's mixed with like Elliott Smith and the gospel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's some like, wow, wasn't it? You know, I mean, with poetry, when I think of like lyrics that people like nitpick now, I think of rap and hip hop.
Really?
Because that's like, okay, you read into the lines and stuff. You read into their poetry, which is what it is.
You know, there's a real story behind that.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting Elliott Smith.
Yeah, no, I love myself some Elliott Smith. But yeah, no, I personally usually I don't listen to rap music too much on my own. When I'm with my friends, yeah. But I like more, I think I like a lot of old music too, but songs like artists like Elliott Smith, they actually like, I think their lyrics are so like well written and they're very creative. And I think it's not even the lyrics that really get me when I'm listening, like when I'm writing. It's kind of just like the whole tune to it.
Yeah, we should have like a Genius verified.
Yeah,
poet, so you can
that'd be
explain
pretty
them.
cool.
Do you consider yourself an artist?
That comes down to what I think as an artist. I mean, in the sense of poetry, I wouldn't categorize myself as that because I really think anyone can write poetry. Like, poetry varies so much. You could read something from mine and be like, oh, okay, I guess that's poetry. Then you'll read, like, Bukowski. Then you'd read, like, Rupi Kaur. And, like, you'd be like, these are all completely different. And, like, I wouldn't, like, categorize these into the same thing at all. But they're all poetry. So, like, I think it really depends on what you categorize as that. Would I call myself an artist pertaining to poetry? No, but maybe like I spray paint a lot, so in that sense, yeah, and I draw quite a bit, so I guess, but I also think anyone's an artist, so
Oh, okay.
so I guess yeah, then I guess in that sense I am.
It's a good view to have.
All right, and final question. Oh, what would you tell someone who's interested in writing a book?
Oh, I would say do it, because I think a big thing is a lot of people think that's not a thing that's possible for them to do. Like, I definitely did not think that was a thing that would be possible at all. Like, I never even showed people my poetry until 11th grade, and that's when, like, it all started happening. But I think a lot of people, like, kind of feel like it's just not a thing that they'll be able to do, and I think you should definitely try it out. To just, like, make a manuscript, get it, like, ready, and just send it out to a bunch of publishing houses. And, like, it doesn't have to be, like, the big shots. Like, I didn't even send mine to Andrew McMeel's. Like, they're my dream, but I know they wouldn't even, like, take a glance at mine, like, bat an eye. So I sent it to a lot of, like, small publishing houses who are down to publish, like, a lot easier. So I think, like, really just know that it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort and it'll stress you out a lot because of how many emails you'll constantly have to read and how many contracts you'll constantly have to fill out. But if you really want to, definitely do it.
Cool. Special thanks to our guest Roma and my co-host Camden. Thank you all for joining us in the 29th episode of the Penny Podcast. Links to the materials we mentioned today can be found below, and see y'all next week.